Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Good Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Beers, and I'm very excited today to have joining us Dr. Chadi Nabhan. And Chadi is a medical oncologist by training. So he's both a physician, a researcher, and he actually even has an MBA. So he's done a little work on the business side of things. And he's been a practicing physician, providing patient care directly. He's also been involved in administrative duties, and I think currently he's the chief medical officer of a new company, and we'll talk a little bit about that. An AI focused clinical trial company. I believe it's called Right Incorporated. Is that right?
Correct.
So, Chadi, it's so great to have you here. Just excited to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, which is cancer research and the progress that we've made in being able to treat patients with cancer. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you. And it's just really, for everything that you have done over the years, it's such an honor to be on your show and to talk cancer and cancer research.
Excellent. Well, I think to start out, I know a lot of people are always interested. When you go to medical school, you have all these choices of the types of doctors that you can choose to become. And how did you end up thinking that cancer was what you wanted to focus on as a career, and what were the experiences that led you there as a young medical student or as a young student?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. I mean, it's usually was not the science, was a human experience I had, and I'll share with that. I'll try to be concise. I actually did share this with previously in one of my books, but I'll share it with your listeners. So it was internship year, and it was the 4th month of internship, and I was on the oncology ward. And before, by the way, I always wanted to do endocrinology. Don't know why. I was fascinated by the biofeedback with the glands, all that stuff. And I had done a bit basic research in endocrinology. So that's what I was thinking. So I started my internship year, and on the oncology ward, as an intern back in the day, there was, I would have to go and look at the clipboard, look at the vitals and write them and all that stuff. So I walk into a patient's room, and 30 years later, by the way, I still remember how she looks like. And she was in her late 40s, just like an angel, looks beautiful, and wearing the thing that hides her baldness from chemotherapy, a cap. She was in bed, and her 2 daughters were sitting on a couch in the room as well. And I walk in, just said good morning, and it's early in the morning. I was just trying to write the vitals, and she took me off guard because she asked me out of the blue after we exchanged greetings. She said, "Doc, do you think I'm going to live until Christmas?" It was October, was not even Halloween yet. It was like mid-October. And I really was taken aback by the question. Number one, I'm a lowly intern who barely knows what ovarian cancer was.
Yeah.
And I not only wasn't prepared scientifically to answer the question, I wasn't prepared mentally to answer the question. And what followed was her actually noticing that I was a bit uncomfortable with the question. So she took it easy on me. She is the one who is getting the chemotherapy and getting the treatment. And she looked at me and she said, she smiled and she said, "Don't worry about answering the question. I know no one knows. I just look forward to seeing you tomorrow with your smile in the morning." And I could not take that exchange off my brain for the entire rotation. It's just, this is a human being that all she wanted is that human connection.
Yep.
And I think we connected. She did not make it till Christmas. She actually died in less than 2 months. And I knew after that rotation, I wanted to take care of these people. I was clueless about anything pertaining to oncology and how cancer is and the cells, all of that stuff. But what I knew is that these patients really yearn for human connection and just being able to connect with someone. And I wanted to give them that. I really felt strongly about this. Of course, with time, I learned about cancer, I learned about oncology, and I was fascinated by that. And then the science came. So that's really how it started. It really started with this exchange. I've written about this before because To this day, I can describe to you how she looked exactly. And she was the reason I went to oncology.
No, that's an incredible story, and it's not a unique story. You know, that
Right.
happens a lot. And what's interesting about patient care with people that know that this is a disease is very likely going to kill them. It's interesting how it brings the best out of people most of the time. I think sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it actually is. It's fascinating to watch people in the human condition of coming to grips with, I have something that I likely am not going to overcome, and just the humanity involved in that. And like you said, it's hard for people to understand the connection that you make with these patients, and it's hard. You carry a burden with you as a physician, where you connect with these people, and to see those people not make it, it's hard to carry that around. And I've worked with so many medical oncologists through my career. I trained with one of the best. Dr. Dan von Hoff was my mentor, and just to watch how he cared about people, and I think that's oncologists have to have that. They're a special kind of person that has to have that connection, because they're dealing with really, really hard things for people, and the families are usually the harder ones to deal with than the actual patient themselves. And it's but it's just a special thing, and it's amazing to have people like yourself that dedicate your life to lifting people up, both with delivering the best medicine that you can, but also just lifting them as a person and connecting them with a person. So I think that tells me a lot about you as a person and who you are and the way you think about patient care. So I guess on that topic, back in the day, and we were just joking beforehand that both of us are about the same age. I think we're both close to 35.
Yeah.
But yeah, that back in the day, when we first started, the options for patients were pretty tough. I mean, you talked about this individual that you connected with, that she had, her hair was gone, and that she was suffering from the side effects of the therapy, not just the disease itself, but the therapy that we were using. Just in your career and your perspective, how do you look, when you look back? I know that all of us are frustrated we haven't made more progress than if you would have asked me 30 years ago when I first started, in cancer, I would have said in 30 years, we would have made more progress than we've made. We're the ultimate optimists as well, right? We are always thinking tomorrow could be the day we discover the next, big thing. But we have made a lot of progress. And so maybe just give your perspective of what it's like to treat a patient 30 years ago and how different that is today with cancer patients.
I do think we need to celebrate the success that we've had. Yeah. I think that it's okay to be hard on ourselves, and it's okay to demand from ourselves to do better and to help more people and to cure more cancers. But reality is, today we cure more people than we've ever had. Yeah. We were talking before the show on your family history of colon cancer, and I hopefully I'm not saying anything that is not publicly known.
No, it's all public. Yeah.
But I actually used to joke. I joke a lot to this day with a lot of my mentees, and I say, back in the day, the entire world of colon cancer was really fascinated. How should we give 5-fluorouracil?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we give it as a bolus, which is the Mayo Clinic? Do we give it as an infusion? Do we give it 5 days? What? I mean, this was the extent of many trials. Remember? I mean, trials, editorials, and everything. That was it. And then Xeloda came, the oral therapy for colon cancer. That was a breakthrough. I'm like, holy my God, we can give oral. It was 5-fluorouracil given orally.
Yeah.
And fast forward right now, I think what has made a difference in the way we approach cancer. For a lot of cancers, we probably know why these cancers are evolving, why they're happening. And so once you know the underlying cause, then at least you can step back and go to the lab, and you're a scientist. I mean, I'm not a scientist, I'm a clinician. So then smart people like you and other scientists can go back and say, let's tackle the root cause of why this cancer developed. I mean, there are perfect examples in hematologic malignancies,
Yeah.
and this is
Yeah.
an area we're very familiar with. I mean, chronic myelogenous leukemia.
Yep. Exactly.
We've known in the 70s it's 922 and all that stuff, but until we figured out, okay, we need to target that particular kinase, and then all of a sudden, CML people now live a normal life.
Yeah.
Acute promyelocytic leukemia with all-trans retinoic acid, and the examples are many examples.
Yeah.
Even when you think of solid tumors and you go to non-small cell lung cancer, yes, we could do better, but for folks who have epidermal growth factor receptor inhibition, and that's really driving the cancer,
Yep.
they're doing fairly well, and so on. So number one, we have made a good progress in understanding why some cancers are evolving. We have not done well when we don't know the pathobiology why cancers developed. Examples of this: brain tumors and pancreas cancer and so on. The next step is the scientific ability to develop drugs against these targets or these mutations that are causing this cancer. And that has evolved as well. We are able now to create these chemical structures that are really well designed against a particular target or against a particular aberration that we are trying to think. So these are the two things that have changed how we do it. And I think it's very gratifying, because the way I view cancer is that there are many cancers that are curable.
Mm-hmm.
We completely can cure. And for those that we cannot cure, many of them are controllable. So I may not be able to cure them, but if I can control the cancer, if I can keep it at bay, if I can keep the patient with good quality of life and be able to do the things they want to do, then that is not trivial. I mean, I think that is really important. There are still ways to go. We should never rest. We should never be satisfied. It's a good thing not to be, it's good not to be satisfied with status quo. But I do feel we have done great, and we are very blessed that, it's very different. I'll tell you something, Dave, that I reflect on a lot, and I'll shut up after that. But,
No problem.
but I really reflect on this a lot, actually. And in some of my presentations, I have a slide actually that I've used. It's written by Patricia Cornwell. It's a saying called timing. It's all about timing. I have lost patients in the past that if they were diagnosed today, they will not die. I mean, we're all going to die, but they will not die from that cancer. They probably will have years and years. Some of these are relatives, some of these are friends, and some of these are patients I cared for. It is about timing. And this is why I'm very passionate about accelerating the drug approval process, the drug development process, because it is timing. There are people that if they were diagnosed, when osimertinib is available for lung cancer, when alectinib and all of these drugs for lung cancer, for breast cancer, you have all of these, for bladder cancer, for God's sake. I mean, bladder cancer patients are doing really well now.
Just today, another drug approved today. Yeah, so for bladder cancer. Yeah.
So I'm very passionate about that, drug development and accelerating this.
Yeah, well, BioHive is a nonprofit building, branding, and bringing together Utah's fast-growing life science ecosystem. Get involved today. BioHive's Women in Technology and Science community hosts events for anyone and everyone wanting to support women in life science STEM. And BioHive's Health Tech Hub community hosts events for those operating at the intersection of health and technology. Register for events and see what's buzzing at biohive.com. I think you and I are exactly on the same page. It is frustrating to think that 5 years ago, if we could have sped things up, that there were people that died of diseases that we now have treatments that they could have we could have extended their lives. And I think that's a real thing, and it really exists. And it's frustrating that the process has become so hard and so long and so challenging. And there's 100 reasons for it, but I think that there are real solutions, and I think that we need to start thinking about how to address to make drugs and make therapies and new approaches for treating patients more available faster for patients. Because the one thing we can't get more of is time. It is the one thing that, I can get more money, I can get more ideas, but I can't get more time. And I guess as I get older, that becomes more and more of an issue to me, because, I look at my career and say, I spent the last 30 years trying to make a difference. Do I have 30 more years? I'm not sure. Hopefully I do have 30 more years of doing this, but it is so important for us. Von Hoff used to tell me all the time that cancer never sleeps, and neither should we, right? That this is, that we've got to keep the pressure and keep working. But it is important, I think, like you said, that we look back and say, we've come a long ways. We really have. And we have made a difference for millions and millions of people. And we are the eternal optimists. You have to be in our field, that we always think the future is going to be bright. And I think we have a lot of data to support that it's going to be bright. But we do have some significant challenges that we have to overcome and have to face, because it's become, unfortunately, cancer has become a big business as well. And when a lot of money's involved, it creates challenges, and trying to overcome those challenges. I think there's a lot of conspiracies about, we have cures that we're hiding. I can 100% tell you there is no scientist and physician on this planet that if they had a cure for a patient would hide that from them. I mean, if there is, they're very, very in the minority. But you could not stop me if I found a cure for anything. Everyone would know about it, right there.
It's sometimes. I mean, these things generate clicks. Headlines. You know how it is. But I think hopefully the majority of people realize that all of us in this specialty are really trying to do what we can for people, because we could be the next patient, and we are going to be the next patient. Nobody's going to escape it.
That's exactly right. I told you about my family history. I have 7 brothers and sisters. The chance of one of my brothers and sisters getting colon cancer is extremely high. With my family history, it's almost guaranteed. Almost guaranteed that one of them, at least, maybe more, will get cancer. So I know that I'm not just working for unknown people out there. I'm working for my own family, and maybe even myself and my kids and grandkids. So that's the motivation for all of us. But I think that when I look at it and people say, well, isn't it frustrating to make a discovery and then wait for however many years? I mean, a great example. There's a drug that we discovered in the last company that I was involved with that got bought by a bigger company. That we made this discovery probably, more than 10 years, maybe 12 years ago, and it's still in clinical trials. And, it's got positive data. There's data out there. This drug actually works. And it is so frustrating to us to think, we've got to be able to have a better way of doing things. So I know you've been thinking a lot about how can we use new technologies and new approaches to accelerate the development of drugs, and how, in your mind, what's the low-lying fruit? Is there low-lying fruit of things that we can change to speed this up? Because I think there are cures that are in clinical trials today that if they were widely accessible, they could be curing people's diseases, but it's going to be years before some of those see the light of day in terms of being widely available. So what in your thoughts and your research and your work, what are those areas that we could actually make a difference, like, quickly? Is there anything we can do?
Yeah, I mean, I hope there is. And I think it goes back to what you're alluding to, which is the long life cycle of drug development. And when you read the literature, pretty much everybody knows it takes a drug to get to market anywhere from 10 to 15 years until you're able to really prescribe it commercially, from preclinical, animal, all of this processes, right? And then a lot of drugs that you hope they're going to make it to market to help patients, they actually never do. So many of the drugs don't make it, and they fail, and that's okay if they don't work. And it's costly process also. It's measured $1 to $2 billion to bring a drug to market. So So the way I look at it is I try to look at the process of what it takes for a drug to go from an idea until it goes to market. And so I look for, again, there's, in the drug development process, today you're identifying a target and you're building a chemical structure or molecule against that target. It's no longer going to be just random chemotherapy like Taxol or Taxotere. It's just not going to be. You actually don't get approval anymore. You have to have the target and the drug. So there are ways, technically, using technology to identify the best target maybe for a particular disease. Is this the right target that I should actually use for this ocular melanoma or for this sarcoma or for this ovarian cancer? So using technology to identify the optimal target, then using technology to design the best structure that is going to target that particular target I just discovered. Am I able to make a cancer that is not druggable? So that's two. That's one process. Then after that, I need to design a clinical trial to test that in humans. Is there a way to accelerate the design of this clinical trial by making very pragmatic? We know that clinical trials sometimes are too restrictive. Some inclusion-exclusion criteria have never made sense to me.
Yes.
But they're there because somebody just decided that the threshold of allowing a patient on a trial to have a hemoglobin above 9, I'm like, why not 8.5?
Exactly. Yeah.
Crazy. And some of these trials, by the way, as you know, Dave, is like, heme malignancies. I'm like, I can't get a hemoglobin of 9.
It's impossible.
It just doesn't work. I mean, I've done, by the way, I've transfused people. And it's just like crazy.
Yeah.
So then you have to design that. There's a way to do this. And then after that, there are ways to actually select sites for these clinical trials so you actually get the right sites and the trial enrolls faster.
Yeah.
Because about 80% of sites run behind schedule.
Yeah.
And 50% of sites, they enroll 0 or 1 patient even after they activate a study.
Yep.
So is there a way to have more precise way of site selection for this particular trial, activate the sites, get the sites to enroll so you can get the answer faster, whether it's negative or positive. And that's what we're doing at Right, by the way. We shall talk about this. Then after that, are there ways for the regulatory process to be faster? You have to go through the FDA. Do the files need to sit at the FDA for a long time? Is there a way to expedite this? Can really the review be faster? Can we use technology to expedite all of these things? And so on. So I view that the cycle of drug development from the beginning till end, there's a technology that could be actually introduced at every step of the way. And if we do it this way, then we are going to shrink that. There's only you can't shrink it to 1 year. I mean, but,
right. Yeah.
But in my view, if you, from these 10 to 15 years, if I take away 2 to 3 years of the drug development process, we are going to save thousands and thousands of people who are with this disease if the drug is effective. And frankly, if the drug is not effective, I want to know faster too.
Yeah.
I want to know sooner. Not every drug is going to work. So let me get the answer sooner so I can move on to the next drug and the next target.
Yeah. No, I think that is where I'm at as well. What I've been thinking about is we've got to be able to apply new technologies and new approaches to speed up this whole process. And the clinical trial side of things is where, most of the science for drug discovery is done in quite small companies, like companies that I'm involved with. And the challenge of the small companies is they just don't have the depth of expertise, especially when you get to the clinical side of things. And so they trust, outside advisors and consultants. And so, you'll look sometimes and, like you said, when you run a clinical trial, you have this protocol that has all these different criteria, and they will design a clinical trial that on paper looks amazing to them, right? To say, oh, well, these are exactly the right people. But when you go to the actual practicing physician, that's the one that treats patients every day, and say, yeah, how many of these patients could you put on? The answer is 0. Like, I can't find anybody that meets those criteria. And there's a big gap in experience and knowledge And the challenge is that when people get that experience and knowledge, they tend to end up in a bigger company, right? They're now in the Pfizers and Mercks, and the small companies tend to not get the they have good science and good scientists, but they tend to not be very good at designing clinical development strategies, because people that have that kind of experience usually end up in bigger companies that are better paying positions and higher profile type of positions. So it's been a challenge, and I think that's been one of the hard things as an entrepreneur in this space is really there's a lot to be said about having people with some gray hair in your team, right?
Yeah.
That have done this a few times, because I can tell you I've made almost every mistake that you can make.
I think we all have. It's probably what makes us, hopefully, number one, it keeps us grounded.
Yep.
It keeps us humble. It keeps us also, it really allows us to hopefully not make the same mistake.
Exactly.
But there's no one that has not thought at some point that this is the best thing of doing something to be proven wrong. So hopefully these mistakes hopefully lead to a better path forward.
So I'm really interested in what you're doing it right, and how that approach is actually trying to improve some of this process. Because for me, when I look at like these, everything's AI nowadays. Everybody's excited about artificial intelligence and AI being applied to everything. And to be honest, I use it every day. I mean, it is transformational, but it's probably overblown in some situations. But the one thing I can say, as I've started to see how AI is being adopted into what we do in terms of drug development and certainly on the clinical practice, is it has the potential of elevating everybody to a higher level. So taking a physician that maybe isn't the most experienced in a certain area, as you become pretty specialized. Like I know your background, you treated a lot of hematological malignancies, and that's a kind of a subspecialty of general medical oncology and hematology. But there are people that are the world's expert at hairy cell leukemia or some very rare thing, and not everybody. If you have one of those patients walk into your clinic, you're not going to be as knowledgeable because you've never seen somebody like that. So AI has the chance of elevating, I think, to take people that maybe don't have the experience and to elevate their clinical experience and practice up. But tell me what Wright's doing in terms of how are you thinking about applying AI strategies to improve this process of clinical trials? What if you could get rewarded just for being healthier? Meet Galvin, the company using the latest blockchain technology to reward you for taking care of yourself. They help with your mind, body, and soul like a personalized health assistant to track your progress and help you feel better. Galvin's G Plus app rewards you for exercise and assesses your mental health in under a minute using AI and over 2,500 voice biomarkers. If you're feeling off, G Plus gives you personalized power-ups, science-backed techniques to help you feel better fast. And here's the best part. When you prioritize your wellness, you earn crypto. Ready to level up your health? Use promo code GOODMED20 at checkout for 20% off. Download G Plus today at the Apple app or Google Play Store and start your wellness journey with Galvin.
First of all, AI is here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think what has really been transformational is generative AI.
Yep.
I do think AI as a field, there's like pre-ChatGPT, pre-November 2022 and post-November 2022. Because what generative AI does is something that we can all agree we never thought it could happen. I mean, it's just some crazy stuff that occurs. So how can we take that and really apply it to cancer care? So at Wright, where I'm Chief Medical Officer, we're focused in the cycle I just shared with you of the drug development of clinical trials on two specific areas. We're very focused on these, very deep in these, because we think they can really shorten that life cycle of a clinical trial and they can expedite drug to market. One is site selection. We believe, and I think the data shows, that site selection for clinical trials is a bit done in a haphazard way. because it's never really based on actual data. It's based on relationship. I know the senior medical director or the CMO of a company. I open the trial. I like the drug. I inflate my numbers. I think I can see, 50 patients of MDS. And I'm like, how could you see 50 patients of high-risk MDS if you're in a community practice, right?
It's not going to happen.
It doesn't add, right? You're not at MD Anderson. So I think there's a lot of this that happens. And then you open these trials, and the trials don't enroll. Well, they don't enroll because these patients they don't have the patients that the trial requires. And it takes a while to activate these studies. So what we are doing, we have digital twins, we have AI twins of every clinical trial site in the world. So there's about 100,000 plus clinical trial sites globally, and we're not just US, Europe, Asia, LATAM, and so on. And there are so much information on these clinical trial sites, literally available everywhere. From clinicaltrials.gov, which is a messy site we all know, but there's a lot of information there. If you tell me that this site conducted a phase 1 trial in hematologic malignancies, I could infer what that means in terms of site capabilities using AI. So we have AI twins for clinical trial sites, all clinical trial sites in the world. This gives us the ability to understand the logistical capabilities of these sites, as well as the patient capabilities of these sites within reason. In addition to that, we have AI agents that are able to analyze and dissect any clinical trial protocol that we are looking at. So we have AI agents that read the entire protocol from the endpoints, schedule events, what does the trial require, what is the trial on, is it on MDS, low risk, high risk, all of these things. So our system allows a sponsor to have the protocol that they have. Our AI will analyze that protocol and then matches that protocol against which are the sites that are most likely to succeed in enrolling patients for that specific study at scale. And then you can say, I want to have some sites who are 30% community, 70% academia. I want to have 30% in the US, 70% off US. There's a lot of ways that you can dissect this based on your strategy. And once you identify these sites, then you deploy the feasibility application, which is the second thing that we have, which allows us to really rapidly activate the sites, because currently about 10 to 40% of sites respond to unsolicited feasibility questionnaires. But now it's different. Now the application, we identified these sites are suitable for this protocol. So they receive the feasibility questionnaire with the answers already pre-populated, because we already know so much information on these sites. So it's pre-populated, not all the answers, but you as an investigator or a nurse, you get the email telling you, well, your site has been identified as a perfect site for this study. We already pre-populated the answers to this feasibility questionnaire. Check the answers, fill in the gaps, and press a button so it could go back to the sponsor or the CRO for that matter. These are the two things that we are doing. We're not focusing on later or before, but we feel if you select the proper sites and you rapidly activate the sites, we believe that this is going to shrink that drug development cycle significantly, and that will lead to faster drugs to market for patients.
Well, sold. Chadi, I'll sign up. I'll be
welcome.
Where do I sign? Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating. And I think this is exactly what we need to be doing in terms of applying technology. And I think your approach is brilliant. I think it's because the data's all out there. Like you said, we know, because we have these registries like clinicaltrials.gov, we know when the trial opened, we know how long it took to enroll, we know the types of patients. So all that data is out there. It's brilliant. So I'm very excited, and I'm not even joking. We definitely need to talk, because
absolutely, would love to.
I'm gonna launch a clinical trial here very soon, and it would be wonderful to work as a partner with you.
Would love to.
Because I think this is a really, really exciting approach. Well, this is, this alone, I'm glad that I had you on the podcast because I learned something that could really help me, which will be wonderful and hopefully help a lot of people. Well, before we wrap up, I wanted to talk a little bit about the future. I always like to think about what's coming next. And we've made a lot of progress in the diagnostic side of things. And that's always been, half of medicine is diagnosis, right? Just trying to figure out what's wrong with the patient. On the cancer side, it's always been the dream that we could catch cancer as early as possible. And so, I think that both of us share the same feeling that the best way to treat cancer is not to get cancer, right? If we could catch it before it becomes truly a metastatic malignant disease that's going to kill you, if we could catch it early, we know that some of the examples that you said that we can cure cancers, the reason why we can cure them is we're able to find them earlier and we could treat them earlier. And so I think generally we feel like that's the paradigm. And there's been a lot of advances recently in things like circulating tumor DNA and circulating DNA that has specific epigenetic marks on it that allow us to screen people that are potentially at higher risk. There's a lot of work being done around the world at sequencing populations. It's not something we're doing here in the United States, but I know you're from the Middle East originally, and in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and in Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, they're sequencing their populations, and they're going to identify people that are at high risk. And so I guess the question is, when we think about the future, and can you envision, and I guess from the clinical trial side of things, this opens up, some interesting challenges because, prevention has always kind of been in our world a very, very difficult thing to wrap our heads around, because how do you know that you've actually prevented somebody? Do you have to run the study for 20 years to find out? That's not going to help accelerate any new therapy. But I think we're starting to get to a point where if we can stratify and find the highest risk people, and we have diagnostic tests that catch the cancer as early as possible, I think we're starting to call it interception or early intervention, and not prevention, right? It's trying to intercept the cancer as early as possible. How far away do you see that happen? As when's the first drug going to be approved, for kind of early interception or early intervention? And do you see that happening in the next 10 years, 5 years, 2 years? How far off are we from that?
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
That's really a tough one, and we could take this like so many ways. And by the way, before I forget, I just have to give one quick plug, which is when we talk about AI in cancer care. I just submitted my third book to the publisher talking about how AI applies everywhere in cancer care. So that's coming out next year.
Oh, awesome.
But going back to what you said, that's really hard. And I'll tell you why it's hard. I'll give you an answer. I'll give you my opinion, and I'll give you an answer. The reason it's hard is because when you detect a disease on the molecular level, before the disease has manifested, there's no question. We obviously understand that the disease eventually will manifest. Yep. We're not really at an illusion of that. It would be crazy to think it won't. But here's the key, though. We just don't know if the treatment that you give now, when you have the disease on the DNA or the RNA level, for God's sake, is needed. And why do I say that? Because maybe there's a lag time. It could take 5 years until the disease manifests. It could take 10 years. It could take 1 year. And the reason that lag time is important is because we just said the way we treat cancer has changed.
Yep.
So if I tell you today that we did, MCED for listeners and viewers, multi-cancer early detection test, and you pick your test du jour, we're not really advertising for anyone, but you get that, and it tells you, for example, that there is a possibility that you could develop, let's say I could develop prostate cancer within the next 5 years. What do I do? Do I do a prostatectomy today, 5 years before? I don't know if people would do that. The other thing is the way the surgical technology of prostatectomy will probably be better in 5 years. Am I doing myself a service if I do it early? Let's imagine I was going to give a drug. Well, the drug is really changing. I mean, we don't treat the same. So I think one of the problems that we are facing is because we are treating cancer differently in the future, I think we agree than today, then are you doing a disservice by treating a patient earlier? And because you do not have the lag time, we don't know whether early intervention is needed. So I think we still need to study this. But here's where I think is critical. I think if we target the high-risk patient population, then it's a different ballgame.
Yep.
Because I think if you take a general population, I mean, think about it. If you get a 25-year-old healthy guy comes into your clinic today, are you going to do a multi-cancer early detection test on? I mean, completely healthy.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
You take the same 25-year-old, he comes in completely healthy, but now you go through the family tree and you see the huge family history of colon cancer, ovarian. I mean, then all of a sudden, okay, well, maybe you fit somewhere. I should consider that. I think we should really, I'm from the school of thought that for multi-cancer early detection, we should really decide the patient population that is most likely to benefit from this, because it's going to be very difficult to sequence an entire population. I don't know what you do with the information. Now, that's today. I mean, that might change. But I have to tell you, Dave, I'm like, if you ask me today to design a clinical trial, and I've designed clinical trials in the past, obviously you have done many of those, I don't know how I would design it. Like, I'm trying to imagine, like, how would I design it? What would be my primary endpoint? Like you just said, is it overall survival, mortality? Am I randomizing people to early intervention at the time of detecting the disease on the molecular level versus treating the disease when I see early signs? Like, I don't know how to design it. I don't envy people in that field, because I do think it's challenging.
Yeah.
But I do fear that these tests are going to become direct to consumer. I'm not going to lie, I do fear that. I still think these tests should be under the direction of a physician who's an expert, a scientist who's able to weed through this. But if everybody can do it, I think we are in trouble. So that's my opinion. I could be proven wrong. We'll have to see.
Oh no, I think you're absolutely right, that I can only imagine being a physician, and especially not an oncologist, but just a primary care physician, where a patient shows up and says, "Hey doc, I just ran this test and it says I have a high chance of getting this." I mean, what do you do with that information? It's it just puts more burden on. Without giving, the best diagnostic tests give a doctor a decision tree to say, if this is positive, then I do this. If it's a negative, I do this. I mean, that's how medicine's practiced, right? Is we rule things out, and we, go through the didactics of, all right, what does this look like? If this is positive, I do this. If it's negative, I do that. And, introducing these types of data, just because we have the technology, we can do it, right? And there's tons and tons of technology being developed. But I agree with you completely that the smartest thing that we can do is try to really focus on the people that are highest risk and identify that. And so maybe next time we get together, I've got some ideas that I'd love to bounce off of you. Because,
well, when you come on my Healthcare Unfiltered podcast,
I'll come on your podcast.
You get ready to address that question.
Okay, all right, I'm ready, because I've got some interesting things. But we're also realizing there's some things that, in today's world, everyone's interested in longevity and keeping people healthy. But we're starting to realize that there are things like, you being a hematologist, you'll appreciate this, that we've known about clonal hematopoiesis and CCUS, and these are things that in their name, it's like clonal hematopoiesis of indeterminate potential. Like, what does that even mean? And it's just kind of an oddity, but we're starting to realize, hey, these things actually do have potentially, these are some of those risk factors that we could stratify people to say, hey, if they have this going on, maybe there's something we could actually do with this population of people. So that'll be a topic for next time, because I've got some ideas about how can we actually think about intervening, because to me that always keeps in my head that the best treatment for any disease is not getting the disease,
Is
right?
not getting the disease.
And certainly cancer falls in that category. But it's so fun to be able to connect with somebody that has had a similar type of experience and background and really dedicated their life to trying to make a difference for patients, and really appreciate everything that you've done. So excited to read your next book and to see what your thoughts are about how we use AI to advance healthcare and advance clinical trials. I think what you're doing at Right Incorporated is brilliant, and I will follow up and we'll have a discussion about partnering together, because I think there's some some real things that I'm working on that you could help me with right away. So I'm excited about that. Thank you so much for your thoughts and joining us, and hopefully this was interesting to more than just you and I. I had a great time talking to you. So
it was great.
Yeah. Look forward to talking to you the next time, and hopefully all of you enjoyed today's conversation. If you enjoyed it, please click subscribe. It's the way that we can continue to produce this content and bring great people like Dr. Nabhan to talk to us. And thank you so much, Chadi. It's really good to see you.
Such a pleasure to be with you, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for today's episode of Good Medicine. Thanks for joining us as we explore the science and stories behind health, medicine, and innovation. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a great zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please click, follow, and leave a review for the podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you have questions or comments for me, please put them in the comments section on YouTube or reach out on all social media platforms at Good Medicine. Links are in the description. The best way to support the podcast is to check out the sponsors of the show. You can do this by looking at the links in the show notes. That's it for today. I'm Dr. David Beers, and we'll see you next time.